Hey guys, welcome back to Shep Talk and welcome back to another Shep Talk movie review. But before we get into that movie review, guys, a couple of admin notes. If you haven't done so already, go to my other channel, my gaming channel, Darth Shep Gaming, where I'll put all my gaming VODs and all my gaming videos over there. And it'll help me out greatly if you guys could just go and give a subscribe to that. But also, if you want to know where I'm going, what I'm seeing, what I'm doing, make sure you follow me on social media, guys. All those links will be in the description down below. But now, let's get to my review of The Flash. The Flash was directed by Andy Muschietti and was written by Christina Hodson and Joby Harold. The Flash stars Sasha Calle, Ben Affleck, Ezra Miller, and Michael Keaton. The Flash has a runtime of 2 hours and 24 minutes. Quick synopsis: Barry is dwelling on the loss of his mother with his father's impending parole hearing coming up when he discovers he can travel back in time to save his mother. When he does, it alters the timeline in a way Barry did not think or predict at all. I'll be open and honest, I didn't go into this movie with high hopes. I am not a big Ezra Miller fan. I pretty much went into this movie thinking, God, I hope this is good, or I hope at least it is a good movie. I really have not been a fan of Ezra Miller for a while, especially with his antics and stuff that he's been doing off screen, especially when he is filming this movie. I'm very surprised that Warner Brothers hasn't let him go and keep backing him and supporting him. But I think really too, the most important thing is I think more people are coming, especially people my age, to this movie for one reason and one reason only, and that is to see Michael Keaton once again be the Batman that we pretty much grew up with in the 90s. And I'm just going to come out right here and say it. The first half of this movie drags for me. It's very slow to me. It takes a lot to get it worked up to the point where it needs to go. The opening of this movie is pretty much like Barry saving a hospital, and there's this baby scene and stuff like that, and it just seems so over the top and trying to be comedic and funny, and it really, to me, yeah, it got a couple of chuckles out of me, but it really, in my opinion, fell flat. I think the first hour of this movie could have really been boiled down to like 30 minutes. We don't really need to see everything that is going on. We could have been like, here's the high points of what Barry has been doing, or what the Flash has been doing since the end of the last movie. I guess what is the Justice League was what the last movie was in. What I think people are really coming for, or what's really going to grab people, is pretty much the second half of this movie. As soon as Ezra Miller, or as soon as Barry Allen links up with Batman or Bruce Wayne in the alternate timeline, that's where this movie takes off. It seems that's where the movie finds its focus as well. It seems where they've determined, like, okay, we need to find some people that can help us take on General Zod, because General Zod is the bad guy in this movie. So they need to find people, because obviously with him messing up the timeline, certain aspects of metahumans are not here, and they're not there to back it up. They're help fight General Zod. So Barry's got to figure out who's around and who can help him. And I'm going to say, man, when the trailer dropped and we saw its take on Supergirl, I was not sold. The look to me was like, not really feeling it. But we'll give it a shot. And let me tell you, I was wrong. This Supergirl was really well done. I thought that they did a really good job with her, and the actress that plays her, I thought, came across really well, because this is a Kara that has not really been with the human population. Her first interaction with the human population is being thrown into a prison and then being released by Barry Allen and Bruce Wayne and said, hey, we need you to help save the human race. When her first impression of the human race was, they imprisoned me. Why am I going to save a species that imprisoned me as soon as I touched down on their planet? But again, I had doubts about her portrayal in this movie, but man, Supergirl is one thing that kills it in this movie. She is another added bonus to this movie. Now, without spoiling it, there are some really good cameos in this movie. Some of them, obviously, we already know off the bat, but I'm not going to spoil those just in case you came into it without hearing who is in this movie or who is making a cameo in this movie. I will say some of the cameos in here, even though I enjoyed them, I thought for a Flash movie, once again, why are they in this movie? Because I was like, why didn't we see certain other people in this movie being that it is a Flash movie. And the music, the soundtrack. Here we are again. This is what, a month now that we've been talking, I think 4 or 5 different movies about how the music and the songs affect it. Where Fast 10, great soundtrack. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, great soundtrack. White Men Can't Jump should have had a great soundtrack, would have helped that movie out greatly in my opinion. Didn't have it. The Flash has a good soundtrack. Like, hearing the 1989 Batman theme mixed into this movie had me feeling chills and vibes in this movie. Hearing the Supergirl theme had me just feeling it as well and getting emotional. The man in charge of the music in this movie did a great job. I'm just going to say that. And it just goes to show you that if you do have someone that knows how to incorporate sound and music, it can really get you into the movie. But overall, this movie does a good job, especially with its music and some of its other storyline. And like I said earlier, a lot of people I think are coming to this movie not for Ezra Miller and his version of the Flash. I think people are coming to this movie because of Michael Keaton and his Batman. Like I said, I grew up in the 90s with Michael Keaton's Batman. He's one of the reasons why I got into the Batman and reading Batman comics. Is watching his movie. And so to be able to see him so many years later as an older kind of retired Batman was really well done and really handled really great. Like I said, I think this movie found its footing when Batman/Bruce Wayne showed up and kind of led some credence and some direction and focus for Barry Allen and his doppelganger. And just to see all the toys and gadgets again and the updates of it were just so well done. And then seeing him fight. It's been so long since we saw the 89 Batman fight, and it's still, they kept the dynamics of how he fought back in that day really well in this movie. I cheered when I saw him throwing down some bad guys and just doing his like batarang stuff. It was just so amazing. I really enjoyed it. And now kind of going back to Ezra Miller and his portrayal of Barry Allen and the Flash. And I think one of the reasons why this movie, in my opinion, is not as great as it could have been was because, especially once Barry Allen let's take it back. The way Barry Allen is portrayed in this movie, and there's nothing wrong with it, is that it seems like they kind of have him on the spectrum. And that's fine, but that's not the Barry Allen I think a lot of people know and understand and want. They want the Barry Allen that's kind of clumsy, kind of goofy, kind of, not the annoying, kind of like social person that doesn't want to deal with anybody that's like socially awkward and stuff like that. You could have a version kind of like that, but with the way Ezra Miller does it, doesn't feel like Barry Allen. But then when we get to the new timeline where there are 2 Barry Allens, the older Barry Allen, pretty much the OG Barry Allen, and his younger, like 18, 19-year-old self, man, did they go into the other side of him. They, someone that hasn't had these dark thoughts, hasn't lost both his parents, and man, it's just like when they're both on screen and they're going at each other, it is like night and day. And the growth that we really want to see the OG Barry Allen have, just kind of like spontaneously happens, and it's too fast. I want the growth. I want to kind of have a mature Barry Allen, but the way this movie handled that was not really well done. Where he sees how annoying his younger self is, and he's like, "Oh, I see what's wrong with how people are viewing me now," and somehow that clicks, and he changes kind of his behavior. I don't get it. I think they don't know how to handle the Barry Allen situation, and that's probably one of the very drawbacks of this movie, at least in my opinion. And one of the things that you gotta have right in this movie is CGI. And I will say for the most part, the CGI really does hit. They do a good, especially with like the big battle scenes and the fighting. The CGI hits. The one area I'm gonna say where the CGI kind of failed me, and I don't know if it's just because of how Ezra Miller is running or how they just rendered it, but when he is running and getting in his pose and just doing his little run it just feels like it's so fake. It's like it feels not that. It feels like he's being like a. Feels like he's one of those runners that they jump and they jump in the sand, like he's running, like because he's taking big long strides. And I get it, right? Because he's trying to cover. He's going to be covering lots of distance and stuff like that. But to me, it just felt like corny and fake, and the CGI just didn't seem to know how to handle it, or the rendering of it. I don't know. It just, that was one of the things. For the most part, CGI was really well done. I thought they handled it good. I already talked a little bit about the second half. The second half is where this movie really comes together. The second half is where we see the people, we see Superman or Supergirl, and we see Batman helping out Barry Allen or the Flash. They're coming together to take on Zod, and then even doing that and having both Barrys having kind of like their conflict and trying to figure out the way ahead, and seeing all that go down is really, it was really handled really well, and I thought it was done really well. It's that first half of that movie though that we get that kind of, that was just an issue with me. That first half of that movie was an issue. If we had had it a little bit tighter, maybe a little different, I think this movie would have done really well. And maybe it's because I was living the high of just seeing Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse the night before. It was, so this movie just didn't hit for me. Maybe if I'd have seen it a couple days later or a week later, maybe I would give this review something different. And guys, I would normally tell you also that whether or not there's some post-credit scenes, but for some reason in this movie theater, as soon as we saw the last scene of The Flash, boom, they shut it off. We had no credit scenes, none whatsoever. We didn't even get to see directed by, we didn't get to see starring, Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, none of that. They just cut it off. So I don't know if they just, I can't tell you if there's any end credit scenes. I don't know if they did it just because they didn't want people to spoil the end credit scenes, if there were some. I don't know. I can't tell you. They just cut it off. But guys, even though I kind of crapped on this movie some, especially a lot in the beginning, I'm going to say it is not a bad movie. I'm going to say it is a good movie, especially that second half. So, with all that being said, Shep Talk is going to give The Flash 3 Sheps out of 5. Guys, have you seen The Flash? Let me know down in the comments down below. What did you think? What are your expectations for going into it if you haven't seen it? Yeah, I'm willing to hear what your thoughts. And if you're an Ezra Miller fan, let me know. We can have this discussion. Because as you can tell, I'm not a big Ezra Miller fan. But guys, that is all I have time for today. If you haven't done so already, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It does help my channel out greatly, and I do truly appreciate it. But guys, I'll see you in the next review.